Well, I'm excited, man, and thank you very much for, Carlos said great things about you guys, and I figured it was just a way to share, because I'm all about sharing with the kids. I'm all about sharing with the community. I'm very philanthropist and activist. We all did the sports thing, and I think that was our calling when we were younger, but there was so much more ahead of us. Fernie, correct? Mm-hmm. And Fernie, when I think about it, I think I'm more of a leader in my role now from the experiences that I've gained over the journey. And when I say a leader in this role, it's like, well, now I can really share value with, the youth. So I think that's really our future. I grew up, 40 plus years ago, my parents left the island of Haiti, and they decided, we're going to have our children in the States to give them an education. Haiti being a third world country in 1804, the first Black Republic, to kind of beat out them being under slavery from those times. So you think about it, they were destined because they knew there was amazing types of people there. But when you think about my parents and my heritage, when they left the island, they came back to the States, and I was born in New York, Queens, Flushing. A little cold, but obviously, when you grow up in that cold weather, you have a different mentality. But my sibling had asthma, so we couldn't stay there. So that's when we decided to transfer and come to Florida. So most of my life, born in New York, raised in Miami. So I can say I'm a native, and I love Miami because Dade County has really allowed me to see so much, and to grow into who I am today. And for what it's worth, man, I'm a Floridian, I'm a tropical guy, and I'm an islander at the end of the day. And I feel like that cold weather for me is not, something I want to live in at the moment. But, when you think about overall, what I learned, playing at Miami South Ridge, I went there.
You went to the Ridge?
I went to the Ridge.
It was funny. You guys beat us 2 years in a row. So I was at Gables and I transferred to Coral Park. But my junior and senior year at Coral Park, we upset a Killian.
Yeah.
And we played against the Ridge, and two times we lost to the Ridge. I'll never forget. I think Little Davis, was it Troy Davis was a running back? Darren's brother?
Yeah.
Was there a running back? You guys ran the wing tee. Who was the coach? God, who was there at Southridge during those years? That was 99, 2000.
He passed away. I had Stu Rogers.
You had Stu Rogers?
I had Stu Rogers,
so Stu Rogers was my offensive coordinator at Coral Gables High before I transferred.
Yeah.
Stu Rogers was a crazy, intense dude. He was my quarterback's coach.
Yeah, that's what he did.
He played at Georgia Tech?
Yeah.
I haven't heard Stu Rogers' name in a long time.
Yeah, man. Throwback.
What year did you graduate?
I left in 2005.
Okay.
Yeah. So 2005 was when I did 1 year of sports, man. I'm a late bloomer. So when you think about it, like my family on my father's side, 7 foot tall uncle, great uncle. So I inherited that green stock height, and that's where I sprouted, man. So, being 6'7", 85-inch wingspan, I could run 4.9 in a 40-yard dash. I was being looked at. And
so that was 4.940 at 200 and something pounds.
At the time, I was 285.
Wow.
In high school.
That's like getting hit by a truck,
right?
Chris.
So, Fernie, when you think about it, I loved it because sports for me was when I found the brotherhood, I found the community, I found organization, and very similar as you mentioned. I was also a guy that didn't really, do much, in I guess on the block, you'd say, like just in the community at that, because I felt like my friends were in sports. So that's why I decided to stay in sports. And I did 1 year, but my junior year in high school, Stu Rogers came up to me, actually my sophomore year, and said, "You know what, man, you're putting some weight on, you're getting wide. Why don't you come out?" I was just so excited that a head coach came up to me because before I decided to do football, my freshman year, I tried out for the basketball team and I made the team, but I wasn't coordinated like everybody else who played the sport. So I was like, man, I'm not going to hold on to this because obviously it's not something I've played all my life. So that's when I decided to take a break and, get into the weight room, start getting big. And then Stu, came at me and said, you know what, come out and play. You might get an opportunity to go to college. That was bells and whistles in my ears, man. When I said college and I don't have to pay for it, why not? And
that's what I thought.
Yeah, one thing led to another, Fernie, and I said, I'm going to do it because my parents don't have to actually put the money up. And that's when I decided, come out my junior year for football. I did well enough where I started with D-line. I was a defensive lineman, a nose tackle, and I was blowing shit up, man, with Varela. I kind of sacked a quarterback. It was my first actual play, and I did really well, and everybody was ruined. But then when I realized that we were a little weak on the offensive line side, South Ridge, they switched my position. And that I was like, well, crap, man, what the hell is going to go on here? I ended up playing right tackle, for Miami South Ridge my senior year. And all of a sudden, like after the season was over, I had Division I, interests, Auburn, Wisconsin, Oregon. We had University of Miami. Wow. All these teams were coming after me, but I fell short because nobody taught me that I had to do an ACT or an SAT and get a test score. They didn't tell me about the student athlete, approach before going into college because they only offer you a certain amount of scholarships signing day. I missed that boat. And what happened to me was like, well, man, I
So you had all those major Division I schools recruiting you.
Yeah.
But technically you don't have SAT or an ACT.
Not yet.
Not even aware of it yet.
Not even aware of it yet, brother. And when I thought about it, I said, you know what? I'm not going to let this pass me by. I'm going to figure something out. A Division II school, Charleston, West Virginia. They recruited me and said, we just saw your film. I was like, what do you mean you saw my film? I said, we want you. I said, I've never been to West Virginia, man. A very rural place. We're talking like these people are still back in the 20s. Like they have 20 years behind.
Blue collar workers, man. A lot of coal and
coal mine state. Yeah. And I decided to take that deal. I said, I'm going to go to Charleston, West Virginia, and I'm going to study business. And 5 years there, I got a master's degree in business administration and leadership. But then I realized at that moment that I got paid to play. And even being at a Division II school, we had 1,200 students at the university in total, not the 30,000 that you get from Florida or even the amount of students you had at We're talking a very private university at the rates and costs of private schools like But it worked out.
Wow.
It worked out.
So you went there, full scholarship?
Yeah.
Played football for how many years there?
I played there. I redshirted, so I did the whole 5-year thing there. And then, while I was there, that's when I got my education. And then I said, well, there's two options for me. I can go right into the private sector and go to Shanghai because my graduate school had relationships, with the industrials and construction businesses. Okay. So I could have went right into do an internship. But I said, you know what? The NFL came knocking because they found my film. Now, we had the Eagles, we had the Pittsburgh Steelers. These guys were like, man, who is Kristoffer? Asked my head coach. Head coach, I miss good guy, potential. And that's all I needed to hear because I didn't have that, oh, my gosh, all my life playing sports, I'm going to make it. For me, it was getting education because they can't take that away from you. And then obviously, if you do go, it's an amazing opportunity, but that wasn't kind of my end game. It was because I was blessed and I had the potential to play and I understood how to play the game is why I made it. But, when the NFL came knocking, Fernie, that's when I realized that I had at least an opportunity. And that's what led me to say, you know what, I got a master's degree. I can always fall back if things don't work out in business because I'll be a business person in some capacity. But you only get one shot at going pro. And that's when I decided in 2009, I graduated school early because I'll tell you what, man, I had 22 credit hours a semester. Some kids were doing 3 to 4. I had a job and I was managing credit. You had nothing to do. There was nothing to do in Charleston. You know what I mean? It wasn't like a school where you had a whole bunch of, parties left. Unless you went to Morgantown, you went to WVU. And that was a 2-hour drive north. But when you think about it, it was good for me and my personality coming out of Miami, already having that opportunity to go have fun at a young age on South Beach. So I was like, I wasn't missing much. And that's when I realized that, for me, it was really being focused so I could, put food on the table, make sure that I can support myself, my family, and that's when I decided. Then you know what, I got a master's degree. Let me pursue pro, and I left in 2009.
And it's funny you say putting food on the table and taking care of yourself and whatnot. I do remember when I went to junior college in Dodge City Community College in Kansas, and my parents dropped me off, and you're like, all right, I'm on my own now. And it's the first time you ever got to go to, for me, it was like, okay, now I got to go to Walmart to buy my food, and I got to do this. You learn to become a man.
Yeah.
And survive. And it's so fun at the same time, Right. And I think that it's in situations like that you grow up. And it's why, a lot of parents will ask me every once in a while, so my kid go away for college or not? I'm like, I'm all easier said than done, right? My kid's not going to school yet. But I'm all about kids going away and having to become men and women, because when you're out there, you learn to survive, right? Ramen noodles one night, maybe you make a couple bucks, take yourself to a nice Outback Steakhouse if you're lucky,
right.
In college. But it's in those moments that the athlete is also becoming a man and learning, how to survive, learning how to get by, learning what it is to play sports, get up, study, and have a job all at the same time. A lot of times I think athletes are put into this box where everything is given to them, and that's not always the case.
Right.
And in some cases it is, but they put in a lot of hours to become the players that they are. So you're there. So let's talk about your NFL journey here.
Yeah, you know what? That was amazing for me also, Fernie, and I say that.
Where'd you end up?
Well, after I left college and I had the business degree, I said, I'm coming back to Miami, and I did a pro day at Miami at the U. I did decent. I had some numbers, and then one thing led to another. The Miami Dolphins invited me to camp. So I decided to walk on, actually, in 2010 under Tony Sperano. We had Chad Henne as the quarterback. Great cast. I mean, we're talking about the big tuna walking around in the locker room. And, it was an amazing experience for me because that was my entry in. I got on
Sperano,
the dude. Yeah, man. He reminded me of that movie Any Given Sunday. Realistically, man, we're talking the language, just the gestures, the body signs, everything that you would see in that movie reminded me of him when we were in meetings. And it was an amazing experience because I was exposed now in the pro world. I was in the locker room. I was in meetings. I was practicing, had a helmet on. Practice squad was amazing, obviously. And I got released after a short period of time, under a year. But then what happened to me, by the grace of God, I went to Canada for the CFL and played under Mark Trestman for the Montreal Alouettes. And that was different, man. I mean, when I say, longer field.
So you went to the CFL?
Yeah.
That's so cool.
Yeah, it was a good experience for me because I only had one relative there that was able to come support me in games and stuff like that. But, over there it's a little different, Fern, and I say because of the rules and the Canadian rules. If you're not an actual Canadian, choices are they're probably going to go with local and opposed to the Americans. And obviously that's where I fell short. But I had a couple, games under my belt. I got some, amazing footage, and I was able to kind of start building my resume. Long story short, I got cut. And, I was still building my career. I wasn't giving up. And like you said, you just, you suck or you're not good enough. But then that was just kind of the fuel to the fire that says, I'm going to keep pushing. Because I know if I still have it in me, I'm not going to just leave this alone because I made it this far.
It's called, I was telling our kids, we have a Little League baseball team that I coach, and we're in a very tough league, and we're playing travel teams and all these hand-picked teams, and we're more of a recreational type league. So we haven't won as many games. And, the kids, you can tell they're 8 years old playing 9U and whatnot. And I, after the fifth game, I saw them, we're 0-5, and I see them kind of demoralized. And I said, you know what, guys? I know that you're probably not going to understand it, but the seed's being planted in you right now, subconsciously. You guys are learning the word adversity. You're learning that the ball doesn't always bounce your way. You're learning to get your butts kicked, and you're learning to fight. And, I believe that you can't start to thrive unless you've learned to survive, right? Every human being, by nature, we're all have these survivor tendencies. And I think God wants us to thrive in this world and prosper in this world, and whether that's in your from your health to your finances to your overall, life on earth. But we have to get put through the school of adversity, right? I don't know guys that can lead effectively that haven't faced adversity at one point in their life, right? It's the scary part about that is you almost know you have to go through it, right?
Yeah.
And be careful what you wish for, right? But there's no other way around it. And you were facing adversity, right, on the football field, and you're thinking the whole time this whole game is preparing you for football, and here you are. It's probably preparing you for life and what was ahead of football.
I got a second chance at life, Fernie. And, when you think about my second chance at life.
What do you mean you got a second chance at life?
I'm going to have to take one step back. After Montreal Alouettes, I got released and I had to come back to the U.S. and I landed with Pittsburgh. And that's when things changed for me when I was in training camp. And,
with the Steelers?
Yeah. Okay. And, being in training camp and, pushing myself to the next level. When you say adversity, I know exactly what that means because every man and woman must go through adversity in order to push themselves to grow. And that's something that I faced even in college, being a guy from Florida, nobody knew where Haiti was. Nobody even knew where Florida was, come to believe it or not. But being somebody who stood out like a sore thumb, I went through racism. I went through, people just not understanding me and accepting me in so many ways. But God is what kept my faith. God is what kept me strong to push through and finish. But when I jumped back into playing sports, the adversity that I faced with Pittsburgh was that I dehydrated severely. And I dropped, and didn't know what was going on. All I can remember is being picked up and placed into an ambulance and rushing over to the UPMC hospital. When I got to the hospital, I kid you not, being an athlete, they're like, well, whoa, we got a sports guy in here. There's 16 physicians surrounding me looking at what was going on with me.
Were you conscious?
Yeah. Well, I was still conscious, and what they told me was that they said, oh, well, Chris, here's the thing. You dehydrated so bad that it's worse, that you actually got a blood clot in your leg. And here's the options, because we got a small window to deal with this. They said, well, if we don't go into some type of surgery to fix this thing, it's getting worse. There's not enough blood flow circulating in your body, and your legs expanding with so much pressure, we're going to have to cut your leg off and amputate it.
I feel it in my soul right now.
Fernie, when I said I'm 22 years old, I'm on a stretcher in a hospital. I don't know any of these physicians, and they're telling me they're going to cut my leg off at 22 years old because I've just, after dehydrating, had a blood clot. You can only imagine the chills in my spine. And I said, you know what? Let me pray to God and say, you know what? Get me through this. I closed my eyes. I said, I'm going into surgery because there's no way in hell I'm going back to Miami with one leg at 22. How am I going to find a wife? Nobody's going to want a guy like me. I mean, I probably would be successful, but at the same time, I need to be able to stand on 2 feet. But as I decided in that very moment.
When you're in that moment, are you thinking life, death? Are you thinking it all?
Well, I was thinking to pray to God and just leave it up to God. But, as I made my decision and I said, you know what, I'm signing whatever documents I got to sign. I couldn't remember anybody's phone number, but for whatever reason, I chose surgery. And I went in and they had to, put me on the operating table, and they decided to go into my leg. Now, as they were performing that fasciotomy, my heart failed, and I died on the operating table. And even to this day, 12 years later into the future, today I'm sitting here on your show, I still get a tingle in my spine sharing that testimony because I got a second chance at life. And I know I'm blessed in so many ways because I knew that God had another purpose for me. And when I woke up that next morning, all I could see was my family there, immediately standing in front of me. They had got on the next thing moving, and they were already there. My parents, both my siblings. And then when I woke up and I saw them, I broke down because I said, you know what? I want to never put them in a situation like this again because of the dream that I pursued, because of the sports mentality, pushing myself to the extremity, but not realizing the reason why I dehydrated because I didn't have enough water in my body. And I broke down. That's a big thing down here in South Florida, or just, in athletes in general. We push ourselves so hard to that extremity because we got to compete. We got to be number one. We got to be the best. And at that time, I'm the underdog. I didn't get drafted. I didn't go through the whole big shebang. It was a guy that said, you know what? I have the same body type as any D1 offensive tackle, and the only difference between a guy who got drafted and came out of D1 is they just had time under their belt. But I got the same tenacity, I got the same mentality, and I'm gonna get it. And that's what made me, pursue. And
do you when you died, do you?
I'll tell you what, man.
Anything do you remember? Do you not?
It was blurry. It was dark, and I fell through a trance. And it was a stage.
So you do remember like a little bit?
Bits and pieces, and I say bits and pieces because I fell into a status of unconsciousness.
Okay.
And when I was in that situation, I just felt like things were getting cloudy. We're getting really somber, and everybody just started fading out. And for whatever reason, it just went pure silence. And
but you're still aware?
Well, in the very beginning, before I guess I fell asleep, and I knew that something was happening. I knew that there was some transition going on, in my body. And for whatever reasons, it just blanked. And they told me that it took 16 hours for them to perform those incisions to be able to release the tension in the clot. And that's when my heart failed during that surgery. And I died on the operating table. And I couldn't remember anything after that beginning of that trance. When I woke up that next morning, they said, "You're blessed. You're blessed because we had to revive you with the 2 square pegs and shock you back." And thankfully, man, being a lineman and being in shape, I was like, man, I was able to absorb that shocker. Because if I wasn't in shape, man, I wouldn't have, been revived again. But that's my testimony. That's my testimony of me.
What's the one thing that death is what most humans fear, whether we have faith or not? I think some of us, there's a country song that says, everybody wants to go to heaven, but nobody wants to die, right? We want to be here for as long as we can. We want to be with our kids, our wives, our children, our friends, our family. We want to live it up. We want to live this life. But did that moment in life completely revert your mind and how you look at life and how you think? Maybe the things that you used to stress, you don't stress as much anymore.
Absolutely.
Yeah?
Absolutely, Fernie. I wake up every morning and I read my Bible. And I read my Bible religiously because I know that I put it all up to God, because God was the purpose of why I got a second chance. And the way that I wake up and approach and attack my mornings is I pray. I make my bed, and, I get up really early because I do other certifications in finance, but that's because I'm a real geek at the end of the day. But overall, I do realize that I'm much more humble. And I have so much more humility towards people and just, my community and what I do, the actions, that I'm able to, put out there as a man, because I feel that there's a bigger reason why I'm still here. And when I told you I saw my family and I broke down, I said, I'm hanging up the cleats. I'm done with this game, because obviously, again, going back to not playing it all my life, thinking this is the only thing I can do with myself, this is the only place that will put me in a place of peace is sports. That wasn't the case. It was an opportunity for me. And it was the opportunity that allowed me to propel and say, well, you know what? My mom always said, get your education. Because you can go on any, opportunity, but they can take it away from you. But they can't take away what you know. And that always stood strong in my mind, ingrained. And I said, you know what? That's so true. And I realized that in college. I said, you know what? Going through adversity, going through the whole racism, going through, stuff where people want to break you down because they just don't understand the differences of who you are, to accept you for what you are. as opposed to just saying, well, because, I'm not fair skinned, or, I don't have, a Mercedes Benz and I'm pulling up in college with, because those are the types of kids I went to school with. I went to school with 98% Caucasians. So it's like, well, their families were well off. Their families were in the greatest position. We probably had 2.8%, which were minorities. And those were the athletes. So when you think about being in a rural place, when I fast forward today and I say, I'm just so thankful, because now it's made me realize that my story needs to be shared. It needs to be told, because kids who don't have an idea of what life really means, outside of just a gridiron or a diamond. And you think about, well, at the end of the day, there's so much more to life, than what we assume when we're children, looking up at our role models, looking up at the people who we want to be like one day. Today, if I get an opportunity for 5 minutes to talk to one kid and just share a nugget, I'll do it. And that's just the type of person that I am, to become a man of God, a God-fearing man that's going to be able to share my testimony and really put out there and walk the walk. Because I think a lot of us athletes, when we, as you mentioned, have privilege and are able to, get access and just think everything's on a gold platter, not a silver, gold platter. I'm entitled to this because I ran really fast, or I hit really hard, or I'm in a position to where I'm just a better person because I'm just more athletic. That's a mental game. I think the mental game for us to be able to season our youth at the early stages, so they know once they get the opportunity, now, well, how you can really maximize on that, not just based off your body and not just the monetary value in front of you that you can reach for and maybe have access to it, because not every kid gets drafted. Out of the 300,000 NCAA collegiate athletes, there's only 300 that get drafted. So you could just imagine the percentile of how many kids got to get a job after college. So that wakes me up every morning and motivates me to know that I'm in a position now that I'm educated. I've had my experience. I got a second chance at life. I died on the operating table.
Yeah, and that to me is like what this whole transition podcast is all about, because, and it's hard, man, because you talk about transition and you try to share the message, but sometimes the environment that you're in doesn't even, sometimes is so strong. Mm-hmm. Right, the current is so strong. The system is. But for me, it's a daily awareness of where, of where personally I'm trying to go and what we're trying to build, and even with our kids and our families. And I don't mean a lot of people have ever told me in my life I've died and I got a second chance. That God for sure has a plan for you. It's why you're here. And I see it in kids today. Like whenever I'm out on the baseball field and in the sports field, and look, man, I teach our kids to compete. We teach them all the necessary characteristics that they need to be good athletes. But we're more focused on who they're going to be as men. Mm-hmm. And again, the same characteristics you have on the field are the ones that are going to drive you in life. Now, the one thing that I will tell you is you're right. You hit it on the nose when you said there was more to life than just football. And I think that's the toughest message to get across to these kids nowadays, because when you're in that field, in that moment, you're young, you're immature, you have a dream, and if you don't have the right leader, the right father, the right coach, reminding these guys, hey, man, you know what? We may not win today, but if you learn how to not quit, get back up, learn from your mistakes, you were a great teammate, and you didn't make today about you. What happened on this field today really doesn't matter 10 years from now. Mm-hmm. Because this is where you're going to do when things get tough at home. When things get tough in your own life, that's what this whole game is doing for you. It's preparing you for the game of life. And I don't find it, I can tell you, for a kid who was walking the halls of Southridge, you were the guy, right? The big, strong, big, half, black guy. This guy's a football player. God knew that. Well, I gave him that gift. There's more to Kristoffer than that. But this is how I got to get him on his journey to go to where he's going. He's going to have to go through all this.
Right.
And that's the beauty. That was your process. And I think the process is where the art of life is, because it's almost, I feel sometimes like God's just drawing this book, this, he's in this picture of your life, of where you were and where you're going.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, I heard Denzel Washington say something at a commencement speech. He says, you know what? We're all going to come a day in our life. Or, and I get a little emotional saying this, but we will all one day face our final hour. And how many ghosts will you have around your bed? And what he was saying was, man, you know what? Play the game with love, play the game hard, and most of all, don't play it with fear, man. Go live your life and go the ability that God gave you, go maximize to be the best version of who you are.
Absolutely.
And always reminding yourself that there's a guy up there who's bigger, faster, and stronger than me.
Yeah. That precisely.
You hear what I'm saying?
Oh yeah.
It's not about you.
Yeah.
You're just an instrument. And this is a part of this world, but that's amazing. And I can only imagine how much that's helping you now in your personal life, in your business.
Yeah.
And how, I'm one to be very disciplined. I can get very strong. And every once in a while I have to pull myself back and be like, all right, maybe I'm stressing something that I shouldn't be stressing. The only things that kind of matter to me now, Kristoffer, and I think I'm doing a better job of this. And it's a daily progress for me. Renewing my mind is every day for me. It's like I kind of work out almost daily, but it's more for my mindset. I don't put my body through, like, some days are heavier, some days are faster, some days are light. But that's how, I release and I keep myself grounded. I love to work out. But I have to remind myself of what the things that are important. And I have this thing, if it's not going to matter in 10 years, it's probably not worth really stressing about. But if it is, I don't want to stress about it, but it's a concern. And we got to attack the problem, right, Kristoffer?
Right.
So
I feel the same way, Fernie. And I look at it as every day is a learning day, and you can put your best foot forward. But, as long as you have a belief system, and I picked that up, from sports. I still have the same regime that I had, that I learned in high school, that I, grew into college, and I, took to the pros. And now from the pros, I take that into my business world. And, I do a lot of stuff with nonprofits and do a lot of stuff with organizations. I'm a businessman, I'm a financial person, and I love what I do. But I wrote a book over this pandemic, and it's sharing, my story about.
What's the book called?
It's called 10 Sustainable Keys to Fulfilling Nonprofit Organizations.
Okay.
And
where can that book be found?
Well, it's going to be in distribution in about a year. I got a contract with a publisher, and we're working out everything to get it into distribution. Barnes and Nobles, Books A Million, Amazon, and really, it's just as we're sharing today a little bit about our stories and telling you a little bit about my transition, life after sport. Being a business person and, get into the financial world, I realized that we had such a huge gap with kind of what happened with, the pandemic, that I realized that I need to help more people. I need to reach more people. And being an expert in the nonprofit world, I've written a book to share what I went through as a player, as an athlete in the pros, teamwork, application process, and those tangible nuggets of how we can apply that into a nonprofit organization to help them remain sustainable. And there are 10 chapters. Every chapter has key information, but really it's just sharing that there's always going to be adversity. There's always going to be challenges, stuff that we're not prepared for. That curveball that's coming right at you at 90 miles an hour, you may not catch it, you may not swing at it and hit it, but you'll know how to adjust and how to make sure that you can still stand strong on both feet and not crumble. Because a lot of organizations, they crumbled because of the pandemic and they were not able to continue. So the book is really about how do we pick up those nuggets and apply them in our organizations today. And I'm really excited because it took 9 months to write it. It's about 45,000 words, 10 amazing chapters, but it shares my life. It shares like my journey and how I'm relaying that to the corporate world. And it's really for founders, sports organizations, and people who could really take away nuggets from this book and use it as a tool. So I'm really excited because I think it's going to change a lot of organizations, and it's going to be something that even children who want to get into philanthropy can learn, from this edition.
Well, what I think, and if I hear you loud and clear too, I think what you're teaching people is how to execute. And you learn that on the football field, right?
Right.
Everybody's got to do their job.
Yeah.
Right? And I think what you're putting together is we've all got a good idea, right? Mm-hmm. But this is how you get it done.
Yeah.
This is how you execute it. And I think that's most organizations that I see, and again, we're not perfect, but we're learning. We made a lot of mistakes in the beginning. But one of the things that I will tell you that we've done great here is there's an execution plan to whatever ideas we want to have, because everybody's got an idea, right? And just going back to what you're saying is, whether it be a nonprofit, whether it be a small business or a big business, whatever, you got to have an execution plan, right? It's like your faith. You got to wake up and you got to read the Bible in order to strengthen your faith. Because if you don't,
you fall through the cracks. Correct.
You're not executing your faith.
Right.
And we all have to execute what we want to do. And it's why, Kristoffer, it's why it's hard to win in life. It really is. I have such a respect for winning programs and winning organizations and winning people. And it's because it's difficult to execute. It's difficult to get up on the day that you don't have it inside and say, you know what? My commitment is greater than my feelings. I may not feel like playing today. I may not feel like practicing today. I don't feel like getting in the weight room, but guess what you had to do? I got to do it because it's not about me. Right. I've committed myself to this program. I'm committed to my boys, to my players. And that's the secret sauce of that I think athletes have inside of them that is such a gift for whatever they want to do in their life. They know how to read a playbook and they know how to execute it. And the great ones always know this is bigger than me. We want to win a championship, and that's just, it's amazing. This podcast is so selfish for me. I'm so blessed to meet people. You have no idea. I've goosebumps. You gave me some sort of emotions inside of me now. I get to meet people all the time, and the one thing that you guys all have in common is your determination to win, man. You don't. Sometimes that word win doesn't come out, but you're so determined to get to where you want to go. And it strengthens me when the days that I feel like, man, I'm getting beat up, and we all have those days. We all have the days when you're getting your ass kicked. I joke with Doug and Lewis all the time. I'm like, you know what? Today, JAG's for sale. And then 3 hours later, I'm like, hell no, it's not. I'm back. Because it's hard. Yeah. It's hard to win. It's hard to find people that want to buy into the program, and an environment. It seems to me like you had amazing parents and an amazing family, and I come from, my parents were divorced, and both of them were there, and I was never abandoned or anything like that. But you know what? and I say this publicly because my dad, this is something I would tell to my dad to his face or my mom to his face, and we've talked about this, a broken home is a broken home. And there's no way we can try to make it as best as we can, right? But it's still broken. And to see a lot of the people that I meet as well, I love Nolan Carroll. He's become a friend, and Nolan always talks about the times he's been on here twice, and he had his parents were both at home, and I don't find it a coincidence that you guys who have that, you have an advantage in life. And it's why I'm a big advocate of, like, fathers, you need to be home, man. Moms, you need to be home. Like, you got to make things work, because kids need stability, emotional stability. And it seems like you may have had your adversity, but there was a part of you that was very stable in your spirit.
My family.
And I think your parents gave you the greatest gift in the world, man.
Yeah, that was actually the root of where it all started, because they believed in me. And again, I wasn't a guy that had 50 friends. Like, I kind of was always been a lone wolf, and I just knew, like, the house was where you felt good, you felt safe, and that's really what got me through. Love, man, and that's a big part of the reason why I do what I do is love, and just being able to touch other lives and share. 'Cause I think, being able to share, whether it's knowledge, it's resources, it's time, that's a special thing you don't get back.
And I'm sure that were there times when there was tough love, Christopher, when the answer was no?
Listen, man, my mom did
the
not hesitate.
No today. You're not going out tonight.
Did not hesitate to drop me at 5'4", and I was 6'5", and I was still my mom was still coming after me with the belt if she had to. Like, that was our culture. Like, but that whipped me into shape. That made me realize that, you know what, you need that discipline, that tough love, so the child could be straight. Because if you let them wander off, then
they become astray.
They're
sheep.
Yeah. And that tough love is really what kept me in line.
And look, Jesus said, I'll leave the 99 to find the one. But man, if we can stop the 99, I think it starts at home, Christopher.
Yeah.
I really do. When you look at America where it is today, and not to get into politics or, here's the one thing I know for sure. There isn't a bill in the world. We can pass laws, we can pass legislation, we can try, that's great, we can do all that. But in the end, the power of the society that we're going to become for our children starts at home.
Yeah.
At home. It's at home, man. I make mistakes all the time at home. But I'm there. And my wife is there. And we're doing the best that we can. And we're learning. Nobody gave me a book on how to be a dad. The one thing I have learned is there's discipline, there's a balance, right? And there has to be a sense of feeling comfortable with communication. Mm-hmm. So, and what I mean by that is, I think our kids need to understand we're not their friends. We can, maybe later on in life, I believe that love evolves and relationships evolve, right? Mm-hmm. But our kids need a foundation where they can talk, right? And ask, hey, Dad, the teacher said this. Is it okay if I ask why? Yeah, absolutely. I'll tell you why. And I think if we can commit to that, we can change the world. Here's what I will tell you. We can have all these great ideas. If we don't rely 100% on God, you can't execute.
Yeah.
Because you have to understand the game, we are his players. We are here to glorify God. We are here to evolve, to progress. But if there's a home where God is not present, it's very difficult to execute as much as a loving parent you think you're being, because, you know, my grandmother told me something that I see it now, and I'm a dad, and I'm like, you know, and it's hard, but you are raising your kids for the world and not for yourself. And that's tough.
Yeah.
Because you want to shelter them, you want to keep them safe, you know, but you got to give them wings to fly.
Right.
So kudos to your parents, man.
Thank you.
I don't find that a coincidence that your determination, somebody did a good job there in planting that seed in you, and, you know, and you realizing that, hey, you know what? When I woke up that second time, who was around me?
Yeah, family.
This is what matters.
The roots.
My time is up. Guess what? Football was a tool, but I got other tools. As a matter of fact, this isn't even my best game. I got other game, right?
Right. That's how I feel every day. You know, football was the catapult to get me to where I'm going, because I haven't reached, you know, even anywhere near where, you know, God, you know, has in store for me, because I do believe in, you know, having that foundation and being able to kind of allowing that to prosper into your time. And I just realize every day that, you know, if you just have good shoulders, it starts at home. Like you mentioned, it starts at that foundational level to know that if you have that strength from within, you're ready to conquer the world, because there are very, very bad people out there, and people that do not want to see you become successful, or are just, you know, looking at when you're going to fail. But as long as you have that stability, I think you can overcome just about anything.
So now, as we wrap this up, from your life journey and everything that you've been through, and to the amazing future that is ahead of you, what's one thing maybe you would tell parents, coaches, and players? And I talk about athletes. I say this all the time. It's very natural for me. But anybody who's in transition, you know, there's music artists out there. There's a person who wants to be a teacher. There's a person today who had a job during COVID and said, you know what? I realized that life is too short. I was at where I was at because I was there thinking, I was there fear-based. I was there because of the money, but I wasn't fulfilled. And the last 12 months of my life, I realized, you know what? I actually want to do what I think my calling in life is. What's one thing maybe that you would share that people should
Right, that's a loaded question, man.
But I don't know if it's advice, but
you know, but it's a great perspective, and thank you for, you know, asking that question. I would say, don't be afraid of fear. Don't be afraid of fear, because make those mistakes and keep failing, but you learn something every time you fail, and that's what gets you closer to success. So if I can tell a parent, a coach, a child that's preparing themselves for that opportunity, don't be afraid of fear of messing up, fear of making the mistakes, fucking everything up, for crying sake. Don't be afraid of it, because you're gonna also gain something from that failure, and you'll know twice as hard that you go after it again. It's gonna be way better than the first time.
Amen to that. Johnny, what do we always say? You can't learn to win if you haven't learned how to fail. I really believe that. I really believe that. But it was awesome having you on, Kristoffer. Your message is amazing. I hope to have you on a second time. Appreciate you coming on, man.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for the opportunity to just.
Where can people find? Can they find you on Instagram,
they
or
can
LinkedIn?
Find me, yeah. You can find me on IG. Instagram is ZOE _ the THE_legend.
Okay.
So the legend, and then on Facebook it's Chris Doura Finance.
Okay.
You can find me also on what other handles do we got? LinkedIn is my full name, Kristoffer Doura.
Awesome, but I would love for people to find you and see what you're doing financially. Are you providing financial advice on LinkedIn? And
well,
I think it's so important, you know, especially for players.
Yeah, absolutely. I speak to players. I speak to colleges. I spoke to the University of Miami. the year before the pandemic, the student athletes. I'm developing relationships now with some universities and speak to their athletes. But yeah, you can find me. I'm a financial advisor, and really just helping nonprofits with their strategic plan, because my book is for nonprofits, and then helping business
That's your
owners.
niche.
Yeah,
It's awesome.
yeah. So thanks so much for having me on the show today. It was amazing just connecting with you, and I look forward. I'll come back around.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you, Chris.
You got it.
That was awesome, man. Thank you.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah.